this is Sean Saney from CB24, and thank you all for joining our special interview segment on how car companies could use different materials for car rocker panels to protect them from rusting and save you viewers money and time at the end of the day. With me, I have Mr. Fahad and Mr. Snehal, two experts in material science who will educate all the viewers about this topic of corrosive rocker panels as a whole. So basically, rocker panels are supporting material that connects the front of the car to the back of the car, making the car more durable. During an accident, these rocker panels have an important function of deforming in the safest way possible and ensuring passenger safety. So first off, I'd like to start with Mr. Snehal over here about the topic at hand. So could you tell us about why corrosion happens so often in this particular car panel?
Alright, for sure. The rocker panels, which are located at the bottom part of the car, are very close to the ground. As the car moves along the road, water, dust and air accumulate at the joints and valves of the car, thereby starting corrosion. The salt, which is also sprinkled during the winter season on the roads for the snow to melt, act as a catalyst and increase the corrosion power.
Alright, so I'm sure there are some restrictions or specifications that your design must have, right? Mr. Fahad, could you give us some insight on this?
Sure. As Ishan mentioned that basically the rocker panel should satisfy the main constraint, which is that it should be able to satisfy the main purpose, which is to connect the front and the back end of the car. And if I go into the functional requirements, first, that as Snehal mentioned, that salt water does speed up the corrosion. And I would quote the reason here, that salt water basically speeds up the corrosion because it increases the rate of flow of electrons. And that's how it speeds up. So our first main functional requirement is that it should have a strong durability towards salt water, like normal pure rainwater, as well as weak acids, because salt basically changes the pH. And the rocker panel should also be castable, because we have to change the shape according to the model or car we're basically dealing with. And if I go into further details into the constraint requirements, yes, the mass should be less than 30 kgs, and the minimum service temperature should be less than negative 50 degrees, and the maximum service temperature should be greater than 50 degrees. And if I talk in perspective of manufacturers, the price should be around or less than 15 Canadian dollars per kg. And as far as the strain or minimum elongation is concerned, it should be less than or around 30%.
Perfect. Okay, so as material scientists, you guys go through a whole material selection process, right? Could you get me through this material selection process? Tell me about any graphs that you plotted or maybe mathematical calculations or anything?
Oh yeah, sure. So once we had derived our function requirements and constraints, our main purpose was to find a material that satisfies our conditions. For this, we derived equations to find the MPI. So we did this by, since our two main constraints were minimizing mass to below 30 kgs or minimizing strain to within 30% or lower. So we derived equations for minimizing mass and minimizing strain respectively. Once the equations were derived, we split it into three parts, the MPI, the function requirements, and the free variables. The free variables in our case were the dimensions, and the functional requirements include force, elongation, and whatever. And the MPI in our case were density, tensile strength, and Young's modulus.
Gotcha.
So once the equations were derived, and we plotted the MPI using SES EduPack, and that was our the way we did it.
So Mr. Fahad, what did you do to narrow down your research once you had all these equations and graphs?
So once we have our equations, we basically plotted the graph, and after plotting the graph, we have the list of materials that basically passed the test.
Okay.
And interestingly, there were 700 materials that basically passed our test. And to further narrow down, we added the constraints, and it basically narrowed down all the way from 700, 600, and all the way to 3. So the 3 finalized materials that we both reached upon were the stainless steel Austenitic, which was just as cast, and stainless steel Austenitic as cast, but it was water quenched. And the third one was the stainless steel Martin stick, which was also as cast.
Okay.
And Ishan, later the next phase was how to narrow down from 3 to the best material selection.
Of course.
And that was a little tough, obviously, but we used the best material, the best option strategy. So the Martin stick stainless steel, its minimum service temperature is very close to normally the temperature we have in winters here in North America. So that was obviously not a very appropriate material to use. Okay. And that may cause the material to underperform and may even cause the part to fail abruptly. So that's obviously not our choice.
Mhm.
And the other two materials, basically, they have the similar properties. As you can see, the only difference is the water quenched.
Yeah.
And the water quenching basically reduces the toughness. So
Gotcha.
that basically was our main factor that
Mhm.
made us choose the stainless steel of Stentic as cast only,
Mhm.
and because of higher toughness, and that's how we reached out to our final
Perfect.
material.
Awesome.
Right, cool.
So this chosen material, stainless steel austenite, right?
Yeah.
Are there any strengthening processes to this? Like I've heard that heat treatment or annealing helps strengthen the properties. Is there anything you can do about that?
Actually, for this it doesn't apply because austenite stainless steels cannot be heat treated.
Why is that?
Austenite stainless steels have a face-centered cubic crystalline structure
Yeah.
with a high level of chromium. At high temperatures, the formation of chromium carbide at the austenite grains results in the decrease of the chromium content in these grains, resulting in the removal of the protective plasma film. This process, which is called stabilization, involves the formation of preferred carbides compared to the chromium carbide. So austenite stainless steels cannot be heat treated. Instead, it's cold work. Cold work involves plastic deformation of the metal below the decrystallization temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And the cold working of austenite stainless steels can partially transform the austenite to the martensite, which are ferromagnetic at the sheared and sharp corners, which is followed by annealing in the mill. The degree to which this occurs depends on the composition of the austenite stabilizing elements.
So after cold working is done, like you said, right? Is that it, or is there any other final finishing touches that you have to give to this material?
No, that's not the final step.
Mhm.
Ishan, there are a few processes that we have to do.
Like what?
Like after cold working, we have to do nitriding. In that, basically, we introduce nitrogen gas and we expose it to the steel surface, the
Okay.
material that we use. So basically, what that exposure of nitrogen does is that we also heat it, and in nitrogen bath salts,
Mhm.
what that basically does is that it forms stable nitride precipitates,
Mhm.
and that improves all the factors that we're considering
Okay.
towards reducing the corrosion, right?
Gotcha.
So as you know, we are focusing on improving the strength, increasing the strength, reducing the corrosion resistance, increasing the corrosion resistance towards salt, water. So basically, these precipitates
Mhm.
they basically enhance the corrosion resistance. They basically increase the wear resistance. So whatever we want the material to do, it's
Mhm.
basically helping in that. And
Gotcha.
after all this step, obviously the final step is paint when that part is being used in automobile industry. But there, as material scientists, we suggest automobile industry to apply some other coatings before the paint. And we normally usually suggest two coatings, which I'll name few. One is 3M889, and the second is POR15. And basically, these coatings can be done under the paint, and these further enhance the resistance towards the corrosion. And the other advantages can be used under the paint, and it basically helps to protect the panel from gavel, salt, whatever basically leads it to corrosion. And because as you know, the gavel and salt basically they result in various forms of corrosion, and these coatings basically prevent from pitting, crevice, or whatever other forms of corrosion. And
Gotcha.
after that is done, the final step is paint,
Mhm.
and I believe then it's ready to use.
Awesome.
Perfect.
So that's perfect,
Yeah.
right? Okay, thank you for joining us today, guys. And we'll take a short break and we'll be back with the weather news.